Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. I'm in my little temporary greenhouse cold frame today, and I want to get some potatoes planted. I've been out of stored potatoes now for about a month, and I am ready to have some of my own. So I need to get some in the ground if I'm gonna have any to eat. So I guess now's the time. It's a little bit breezy out today, so hopefully you can hear me over the plastic rattling here on the greenhouse. But I want to get this done, and we've had wind for weeks here now, so I can't wait any longer. I'm going to be planting the potatoes mostly in these homemade pots that I made last year. So if you haven't seen that video, then I'll pop a link in and you can check it out. But I just made them out of some felt, and I have one out of landscape fabric. I know I have more somewhere, but I couldn't find them. My shed's a little bit of a disaster right now, so hopefully they show up. And like I think most of us out there these days, I'm a little short on supplies, and getting things isn't quite as simple as it used to be. Our one greenhouse in town has allowed us to do some ordering where you can order online and pay for it, and then you just drive up to the gate, call them when you're there, and they bring it to your car. So I've been able to get a little bit of manure and some seed potatoes that way. I'm not actually using those seed potatoes yet, I just got them, but so I have a little bit of that, but I haven't been able to get myself any good bags of potting soil or anything, so I'm actually going to be using some leftover potting soil out of a flower pot. The pot's, I think it has a crack in it. I'm pretty sure I saw one the other day, so I'm going to have to empty it out anyways. And like I said, I was able to procure a little bit of a composted steer manure from the greenhouse, so I'm going to use some of that, which I always use with my potatoes. And then I have lots of leaves that I collect up in the fall, so they're going to go in the bottom of these pots. So let's just get started, and I'll show you what I'm doing while I'm doing it. So I'm going to be using these grow bags that I made last year. They worked well for me, and I'm interested in using them again. And I've just filled them with some leaves that I had mulching my raised garden beds. And I've just taken that off and put it in the bottom. It adds some nutrients as they grow. It helps to retain some moisture, and it'll be a bit of filler for me, as you know, it's a little bit tricky to get your hands on some of these potting soil and products these days. So I have the leaves, and then I have a big flower pot with some potting soil from last year in it that has been up by my front door, so it's actually somewhat thawed out. So I always like to put a little bit of steer manure in with my potatoes, especially if I'm growing them in pots. I didn't bring a knife or anything out here, so it'll be interesting. So, these bags of manure were pretty much completely frozen when I picked them up a couple of days ago, so kind of dig around the ice. They're starting to thaw out because I've had them sitting in here. Just added a few handfuls of that in on top of the soil there, and a little bit of bone meal. Add that in there. More potting soil. I'm just mixing it all up so you can see what I'm doing here. So I just got that all mixed up in there. And then I have these potatoes here. These are Linzer Delicatessen. These are saved from the potatoes I grew last year. And as you can see, they're not chitted out or anything. I'm not really worried about that. I can see tiny little eyes on them. They just haven't formed big sprouts. These are an early potato. They're a pretty prolific producer. So I'm going to be putting them in there. They should be ready to harvest in 8 to 10 weeks. So I'm going to put them down in here. I'm going to put a bit more potting soil on them. I'm going to put some leaves on, and then I'm going to water them in real good and just leave them here in the greenhouse. These are a determinate type of potato. I believe all early potatoes are, and most of the potatoes that I grow are. We just don't have a really long season, so growing indeterminates really isn't to our benefit as far as I'm aware. So it's April 18th today. My average last frost date is about May 19th, so a little while yet to go of frosty nights. These are going to sit inside this greenhouse for a little bit here, but potatoes can take a little bit of cold. They don't love frost, but the tops will get frosted if they get frost, and the tubers at this point in the year would be fine here, but it would slow them down a bit. So I'm going to keep working on this. Okay, so the Linzer Delicatessen are done. I'll move them out of the way. I haven't put water on those yet, but I will once I get everything done here. So then the other thing I'm going to be doing is planting some I call them carob, but they're actually Caribe potatoes, and they're kind of a mid to early potato. These guys are purple skin and white flesh. These ones are ones that I had harvested last year and saved. Now you'll notice these ones are sprouted and they're wrinkly and they're a little bit older. That's because these ones were just saved in my regular stash of potatoes. And then I put them to the side. The other ones I'd pulled right away and refrigerated them just in case they didn't store well. So they just came out of the fridge 2 or 3 days ago, the other ones, whereas these ones have been out since I harvested them last fall. So that's why they look so different. So the Caribe will be mature in about 12 to 14 weeks. And I'm going to be doing a very similar thing with them as I did with the others. The only difference is I'm using this milk crate. And I'm just going to put a little bit of landscape fabric around the edges here just to keep from losing all the soil. There's been years where I've just put some newspaper or something around the edge. Oh, there's a landscape sticker. And as it decomposed, the roots and the sprouts and that came out the sides of these crates. But being as things seem a little bit more precious this year, I'm gonna try and conserve everything I have. So the process, other than what I'm using to put them in, is going to be the same. I'll be filling the bottom with these partially broken down leaves. Again, that just will help hold some moisture down there in the root zone, because the one thing with growing potatoes in containers is trying to keep them moist enough. Potatoes do like a good supply of moisture. So that gives you some of that there. And then I'm gonna put this chunk of composted steer manure, and then I'll put a little bit more here. These bags, when I brought them home a few days ago of composted steer manure, were pretty much completely frozen, and you can see how sitting in here they've actually thawed out quite a bit. There's just that one chunk of ice in this bag, so definitely warm enough in here to have these growing. If you've seen some of my other potato planting videos, you may remember I quite often will just use the composted steer manure and peat moss and some leaves in the bottom, a little bit of bone meal sometimes if I remember. But we're just using what we have here today, so. All right, where's those potatoes? So I'm just gonna set these in now. Some people worry about which direction to put them, which direction not to, or rubbing off eyes or whatever. Really, I don't think planting potatoes is that complicated. I'm just gonna space them out in here. Try to keep it right off that ice chunk. And they'll grow. They'll find their way to the surface with their shoots and make potatoes for me, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm just gonna cover this over, some potting soil and some leaves, and we'll be done. So most of the action with the potatoes that you planted is going to happen below the area where you placed them, and this with determinants anyways, and this top layer of soil is just really keeping them, as the potatoes grow and push up the soil, they're not pushing their way out and getting the sunshine on them, because that creates green spots on potatoes, which is actually creates a poison area on the potatoes. So the last layer of leaves. There's a little bit of cardboard and grass clippings and whatnot in here too, but it doesn't matter. It's just adding a space to hold some moisture and keep the sun off any potatoes that come up. So that's all there is to it. So I'm gonna give these all a good drink. Okay, so that's really all there is to planting potatoes. It's not a difficult process, and potatoes really, once you get them in the soil there, they'll pretty much take care of themselves. Just make sure they don't dry out. And once you see flowers on the plants, that's usually a good indication that there's some potatoes happening below ground. You can usually just dig in the sides by then, and even steal a few little potatoes off the top of the pile there without pulling up the whole plant, so the rest can continue to grow and get bigger. And then once the leaves yellow and die back, that will usually tell you that they're ready to be harvested at that point, as long as it isn't a disease or something else causing it drying out or something. But generally that's your indication that they're ready to harvest. So I'm hoping in 8 to 10 weeks that these bags will be ready to go and I can have some fresh potatoes again from my garden. And the other one, like I said, in about 12, 14 weeks, something like that, I'll get some potatoes out of that one too. So I'll bring you back when I harvest some of those. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.